Nigeria's military says it has only one town left to recapture from Boko Haram's former stronghold. The white gold that could lift more than 1 million farmers in Kenya out of poverty. And Madonna the Tireless. The pop superstar is back and storming the charts. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening, I'm Vincent McCory. This is Africa 54. A bombing attack has left at least 12 people dead in Nigeria. The suspected female suicide bomber detonated the device in Maiduguri, the capital of Nigeria's Borno state, on Tuesday. The attack came 3 days after multiple bombings in the city killed more than 50 people. Meanwhile, Nigeria's military says it is scoring a string of victories against Boko Haram with the recapture of towns previously held by the militants. Cameroon, Chad, Niger and Benin have mobilized forces this year to help Nigeria defeat Boko Haram after it seized large amounts of territory and staged cross-border attacks. Morale was high among Nigerian troops who sang and set fire to the Boko Haram flag during a tour through Buniyadi, one of the recaptured towns. The Nigerian task force officer says there is no stopping until the victory is complete.
Like I told you earlier, Yobe State is made up of 17 local governments. And sometimes in the middle of last year, 2 local governments were completely lost to the insurgents. And as I speak to you now, we have just one major town to take to complete the retaking of these 2 local governments, and that is Gonori. And as I speak to you, one of the battalion is already en route to Gonori to take Gonori. We have swept every other place. We are moving to Gonori now, and I'm sure they will take it very soon.
Local vigilantes helping the troops believe the campaign is working.
The soldiers are working around the clock to ensure the return of peace in our communities. We also assist them, and this has been very successful.
Lately, Boko Haram has been on the defensive after Chadian and Nigerian troops launched offensives in coordination with the Nigerian army, successfully reclaiming some important towns in Borno. Nigerian government forces have also pushed the militants out of Adamawa state and regained ground in Yobe, although Boko Haram raids persist. Until recently, the insurgents controlled an expanse the size of Belgium. Boko Haram has killed thousands and displaced over 1.5 million people over a 6-year period in a quest to carve out an Islamic state in the northeast of Nigeria. The group gained international notoriety in April 2014 after it kidnapped over 200 schoolgirls who were yet to be found. Well, Nigerian President Goodluck Jonathan spoke to VOA's Chris Stein today on his government's fight against Boko Haram.
I'm hopeful that in the next 3 weeks, we'll be able to take over our territories. That will not end Boko Haram. But the issue of holding on to territories, I believe in the next 3 weeks we'll be able to take over these territories. Yes, they will still be using improvised explosive devices, these IEDs, to cause havoc, especially soft targets like markets, schools, and so on. And people have to be extremely careful. But the issue of holding on to territories where they will pin in their flags, I believe in the next 3 weeks we'll be able to rout the Boko Haram. But for these 2 states of Adamawa and Yobe, by middle of next week, we'll be able to clear these 2 states. And Borno State, I believe, in 3 weeks' time from today, we should be able to clean up Borno State.
We'll have more of Chris Stein's interview with Nigerian President Goodluck Jonathan on Thursday. Now to the Middle East, bordering both Iraq and Syria, Jordan hosts hundreds of thousands of refugees, many fleeing the Islamic State. Some of the refugees are Christians who say they were especially targeted by the extremists, though some experts say the violent group's victims have included every religious group in that region. VOA's Heather Maddock reports from Amman on how Islamic State violence is affecting Jordan.
Ahmed cleans houses and does odd jobs to support her 4 children after fleeing Raqqa, an Islamic State stronghold in Syria. Like most refugees, Ahmed is a Muslim and is barely surviving in the Jordanian capital, Amman.
What can I do? They're my children. Their father doesn't want them. He told me that I should just throw them away if I don't want them. What can I do? They're my children. Should I throw them in the street?
While fewer in number, Christians fleeing the Islamic State say they are particularly targeted. In recent months, the Islamic State has stepped up attacks on Christians, raiding villages, abducting hundreds of people, and releasing a gruesome video of the slaughter of 21 Egyptian Christians in Libya. In Amman, Sister Mariana cares for Iraqi refugees in a safe house the residents didn't want filmed. She says families were told to convert or die, a trauma from which many will never recover.
They want to secure their futures and the futures of their children. Already, it's finished. For them, it's finished for them, but for the babies, for the children.
But analysts say it's not specifically Christians that are the targets. It's anyone who doesn't follow the Islamic State's extremist ideology. Hamada Farana is an author and former member of Jordan's parliament. He says the underlying causes of the Islamic State's growth are not even related to religion. But the group's rise, he says, is increasing tensions in Jordan, creating sectarian divides.
There is no doubt that rising tensions, hunger, and oppression could lead the country to a state where we have sectarian violence. Because what is the cause of violence? It is social tension, oppression, poverty, and hunger.
Jordanians are also quick to point out that they don't consider the conflict with the Islamic State to be a religious conflict because they don't consider Islamic State fighters to be Muslims.
As we see it, what they do is terrorism, not Islam.
The Islamic State has captured vast swaths of territory in Syria and Iraq and is expanding its reach, with militants in Libya, Egypt, and most recently Nigeria declaring their allegiance to the extremist group. And as the group gains strength despite international efforts to beat it back, refugees of all faiths are losing hope that they will ever again go home. Heather Murdoch, VOA News, Amman, Jordan.
Well, child trafficking is one of the fastest growing crimes in the world, and it's prevalent in Africa. Young women and children from Malawi are often transported to other African nations and to Europe and Asia and forced into domestic servitude or the commercial sex trade. VOA's Paul Ndiho spoke with Malawi's leading human trafficking activists and has our report.
The United Nations says human trafficking is a major problem in Africa, where young women and children are often transported abroad and forced into prostitution. In the southern African nation of Malawi, it's an underground business driven by enormous profits. Boniface Mandele, a human rights trafficking activist based in Blantyre, Malawi, says that this heinous crime is at an all-time high.
We have the organized networks that are facilitating especially the movement of children from Malawi to South Africa, because the 80% of the people that we have managed to rescue, they don't have passports. They don't have money to travel to South Africa, meaning that some people, they are organizing their passports.
Mandele says that Malawi is a transit point for foreign victims and a destination country for men, women and children from Zambia, Mozambique, Tanzania and Zimbabwe, who are subjected to conditions of forced labor or commercial sex exploitation. He observes that given the nature of this trade, statistics on the numbers of those who try to cross through Malawi are very sketchy.
In terms of the especially for women and men, the reports, we don't have the particular statistics, because we haven't yet done any study on trafficking in persons in general. The studies that we have done before is specifically targeting children and young boys and young girls.
Last year, the United States Department of State published a report that named Malawi as a source country for men, women, and children to be trafficked for forced labor and sex. The report says that the Malawian government does not fully comply with the minimum standards for the elimination of trafficking. Mandela and other critics could not agree more.
It has been a very big challenge in terms of prosecution. We have so many prosecutions that they have resulted into either dismissal of the case because lack of evidence or skills, especially for the magistrate as well as prosecutors, as well as the magistrate, but also because they don't have that particular piece of law which can comprehensively dealt with issues of trafficking in persons in Malawi.
Voice of America reached out to Malawi government officials for comment, but our calls were not returned. However, the Malawian government maintains that it's making progress in its anti-trafficking law enforcement and prohibits all forms of trafficking through various laws. Paul Ndiho, VOA News, Washington.
We want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we covered. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54, and check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Coming up, the white gold that could lift many of Kenya's farmers out of poverty. Stay with us.
Nigeria heads to the polls March 28th for a landmark election. What happens there matters throughout Africa. Turn to Voice of America for the facts. VOA reporters are in Nigeria and surrounding countries covering the campaigns and the issues and counting down to the March 28th election and beyond. Special Nigeria Decides 2015 coverage is underway now. A commitment to Africa from Voice of America.
Welcome back. Now, Kenya's milk consumption is the highest in the developing world. And with the demand for milk increasing, this white gold has the potential to lift more than 1 million farmers out of poverty. We get more in this report from the International Fund for Agricultural Development.
Kenya has one of Africa's largest dairy sectors, and milk consumption here is the highest in the developing world. About 80% of this milk is provided by smallholder farmers, and this high demand for dairy is a great opportunity for them to break out of poverty. But in order to do this, they have to become more professional and commercially minded. Not long ago, mother of 3, Salome Meto, had 1 cow, little milk and no money. But that changed when she joined 120,000 other farmers in a training program run by the government with the support of the UN's International Fund for Agricultural Development. Now, with 2 cows and 4 goats, dairy has become her family's principal income. She can provide 3 meals a day, pay the school fees, and has built a shed for the animals. No longer worrying about shortage of grazing land or low-quality feed, her animals are healthier and producing up to 3 times as much milk. Salome says this is all thanks to the training she received.
The seminar that I've been attending has helped us so much to increase the production. We use now dry meals, which is in fact fair and more good to our cows because we prepare it and it can long last.
This nutritious fodder can be dried and stored for use in the dry season, enabling them to maintain a steady milk production all year round. Besides the importance of feed, the farmers also learnt about breed, disease prevention, business training and marketing. Organised into groups, these farmers now manage collection centres like this one, where milk is tested and stored hygienically. Working together to ensure quality in larger quantities, they can strike deals with major national processors who buy their milk on a daily basis. In fact, business is going so well that they are planning on installing a second 5,000-litre container. And the growing popularity of dairy products is having direct benefits on their health, as Moses Kembe, the programme coordinator, explains.
Because of the increase in income, and most of the households are now able to increase their milk intake, the nutritional levels of especially also the school-going children has improved.
As well as enhancing DARTs, milk production is also boosting local economies, and employment in the sector is up 200%. Unemployed youth Isaac Kiptu was quick to see a future in the dairy business.
There was a chance if I could do this business, I could get a job, I could earn some money. At the same time, my family and neighbors, they could get a way to take their milk to the market.
When Isaac started his milk rounds, he was using a bicycle, but soon he could afford to buy a motorbike, enabling him to take on more clients and provide a speedier service. Every morning, Isaac loads up their milk and takes it to the cooler. But recently, especially during the rainy season, milk production has increased so much that he needed to scale up. Now he can transport more milk, and with the extra income, Isaac has bigger plans ahead.
I'm planning to start saving. In fact, I've saved a bit for my education. I want to go back to school because I see in milk industry there are better chances ahead.
Today, over 840,000 Kenyans like Isaac and Salome are making a living in dairy. With 1 million small-scale dairy farmers in the country and consumption levels soaring, milk could well become Kenya's white gold.
Well, that report was supplied by the International Fund for Agricultural Development, a United Nations agency. Well, Ethiopia is looking into space. 2 new telescopes are expected to propel the East African nation into space technology as part of Ethiopia's development program. Marth van der Wolf reports from Ethiopia's Space Observatory.
These 2 optical telescopes are the latest means through which Ethiopia aims to use space technology to further the country's development. The observatory is fully functional and soon fully operated by Ethiopia's own engineers. International scientists like David Buckley have been in Ethiopia for weeks to test the telescopes and make sure everything is in line with international standards before handing it over to Ethiopia.
We check that the stars are very sharp in focus, there's no distortion across the images, that there's uniformity across the whole field of the telescope. And then the second, probably most important attribute of the telescope is how well it points to an object.
Building the telescopes and observatory took 3 years. The cost of the telescopes alone was almost $3 million. Dr. Solomon Belai, director of the Space Observatory, says the money is worth it, as space technology will contribute to developing Ethiopia.
For example, in agriculture, data processing, crop production, and modernizing of agriculture to industry, and in energy sector and fossils, exploration of mining, energy, and in telecommunication sectors.
The observatory was built 20 kilometers outside the capital city Addis Ababa on top of Mount Entoto and 3,200 meters above sea level. Here the altitude is high and the wind speed, humidity and cloud cover are low. There are about 30 graduate students, 5 engineers and 20 permanent and adjunct professors. Engineers like Guyon Ashenafi will spend many nights in the observatory because that is when they can actually use the telescope to study the universe.
And we take the spectral of the stars, we will analyze them, and we know what the universe is all about, where we come from, and what probably our destination will be. And we can also analyze our atmosphere and generally the aspects of our solar system.
While this is only the start of Ethiopia's space program, the observatory has big plans. Ethiopia's observatory promises free access to African students and researchers to promote African space development. And Director Solomon is clear about what he wants to reach with the observatory in the next 5 years.
Ethiopia will going to launch his own satellite built by Ethiopians and launched by the Ethiopians.
Martha van der Wolf for VOA News, Addis Ababa.
Cool. Well, it's time now for a short break. Still to come on Africa 54, a pop legend returns with a hit album and the usual controversy. We'll be right back.
If you've just joined us, I'm Mariama Diallo, and here is a quick recap of today's headlines. In Nigeria, a female suicide bomber kills at least 12 people in a market in Maiduguri. In Guinea, final trials of the Ebola vaccine are being tested for efficacy and effectiveness in preventing the disease. In Madagascar, children are starving as hunger hits 200,000 mark from drought, many left to rely on international food aid to rebuild food stocks. Finally, in Ethiopia, the iconic black-maned lion is facing extinction because of shrinking natural habitat. That's it for today. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Welcome back to Africa 54. Here's what's trending.
Made me feel like I was born again. You empowered me, you made me strong.
Well, that's a clip of the song Living for Love from Madonna's newest album, Rebel Heart. It's the 13th album from this 56-year-old superstar, and the release started with controversy. Last December, 13 songs she characterized as unfinished demos leaked online. Our team decided to finish and release 6 of the tracks immediately on iTunes and quickly reached #1 on the digital music services charts in 41 countries. Madonna released the music video for Living for Love on Snapchat. It's the first video ever to premiere on the app Snap channel. Now, next up, virtual reality is coming to a sitting room near you. The immersive technology took center stage at the Games Developers Conference in San Francisco. Razer's open-source headset is letting independent developers tinker with its prototype. The long-awaited consumer version of Facebook-owned Oculus Rift is slated for release this year, and Sony says its Project Morpheus PlayStation hardware will be ready in 2016, so stay tuned. And finally, a victory for lovers of elephants. One of America's largest circus companies, the Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus, says it plans to stop using elephants in its show by 2018. It says growing public concern about how the animals are treated led to the decision. The company's 43 elephants will live at an animal conservation center in Florida. The circus will continue to use other animals such as lions, tigers, horses, camels, and dogs in its performances. And that is what is trending today. Well, thousands of Americans recently gathered in Alabama to mark the 50th anniversary of the historic Bloody Sunday Civil Rights March in the town of Selma. During that 1965 event, police attacked African-American demonstrators demanding voting rights. VOA's Chris Simpkins introduces us to some civil rights pioneers who are still fighting for the voting rights in Alabama 5 decades later.
The vote is definitely more vulnerable than it has been since 1965. There's no doubt about that in my mind.
Without the 1965 Voting Rights Act, Hank Sanders believes he would not be sitting in this chair.
And it's getting worse. Every time they try to find some new way to make it harder to vote rather than easier to vote.
The longtime Alabama state senator credits the voting power of blacks in the South for his string of successes at the ballot box. But 50 years later, he's worried about new efforts to restrict who can vote.
It's more than troubling to me. It's deeply painful. You know, anybody who was a part of the Voting Rights Act 50 years ago, we could not imagine that 50 years later we'd still be fighting for the right to vote.
There were those who said that we would get here only over their dead bodies. Well,
All the world today knows that we are here and we are standing before the forces of power in the state of Alabama saying we ain't gonna let nobody turn us around.
Sanders remembers the spotlight shined on Selma after police beat back hundreds of blacks who were peacefully protesting for voting rights in 1965. 50 years ago, history was made on this bridge. Now people in this community do not want the world to forget what happened here and never let it happen again.
We just have to fight in every way that we can to try to restore the Voting Rights Act. And we have to fight in every way we can to beat back these many and varied attacks on the right to vote.
No, I don't need to leave. We have come to register to vote.
Sanders says the violence of the 1960s is gone. He says the fight now is against new voter identification laws and a proposal to make residents prove their citizenship before they can register to vote.
Photo ID is just another kind of poll tax. The citizenship requirement in order to be registered is just another kind of literacy test. There are always different things that'll be put in.
I said I was going to go to law school, come back to Alabama, pass the bar exam, and destroy everything segregated I could find.
Legendary civil rights attorney Fred Gray has been fighting for voting rights for decades in Alabama. He says a 2013 U.S. Supreme Court ruling eliminated parts of the 1965 Voting Rights Act. The 5-4 decision allowed 9 states, mostly in the South, to change their election laws without advance federal approval. The divided court disagreed on whether racial minorities still face barriers to voting in states with a history of discrimination. Gray says the battle for expanding freedoms at the ballot box can be won.
But I don't think we need to get discouraged by what the Supreme Court did. We're sorry that it did it. We hope we can get around it with additional legislation, and the struggle continues.
How long? Not long. Because the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice.
These longtime civil rights activists say they will do everything they can to overturn restrictive voting laws, restore the full Voting Rights Act, and battle against further efforts on the right to vote. Chris Simpkins, VOA News, Selma, Alabama.
Well, that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. For more news, tune in to VOA's evening radio show, Africa News Tonight at 1800 UTC, and in the mornings to Daybreak Africa, 20300 and 0600 UTC, Monday through Friday. Thanks a lot for watching. From all of us here in Washington, have a good night. We are able to touch on things that are important to people on an everyday basis. Hello and welcome. I'm Vincent McCory. This is Africa 54. In a lively half hour, news, sports, health, lifestyle information, comments from our viewers. Africa 54, the best for Africa, about Africa. Join us only on VOA.
Music is something that brings people together.
Music educates, it motivates, it's a bridge.
Music. Ali.
On
VOA.
I am Sheka Sali, host and senior editor of VOA's international call-in talk show, Straight Talk Africa. The issues that we discuss are pertinent to most people on the African continent.